I consider my position within the arts and culture unique in New Zealand because I am a migrant from Asia. So the reason why I wanted to be part of the Curators tour is to understand more deeply the arts and cultural scenes in China and South Korea, and eventually the rest of Asia, to see how they might differ or be similar, or what we can learn here in New Zealand. And especially given that the gallery for which I work, 38.8% of the population are recent migrants from China, South Korea and India. So it was this dual responsibility of one, being an Asian migrant and wanting to exercise that more deeply in New Zealand through exhibition making, and on the second hand, catering for the local audiences for which I serve at Uxbridge. We found that the art scenes in South Korea and China are very different. It felt that the South Korean art scene was very much supported, flourishing, it was saturated. I think there was a rumor that more than 13,000 exhibitions open in Seoul alone every year, including private galleries, public museums, artist-run spaces, so it's very full. In China, it's equally thriving, but for very different reasons. It's because they have, it seems, a lot more private monies, a lot more private sponsorship and funding, and along with that, you get a lot of acquisitions and collections that are privately motivated. So I found in China that the artist-run spaces, like the storefront galleries or the garage at the bottom of an apartment, those to be really interesting in the way that they kind of move around the private big institution questions. We made a few very good contacts. Some curators, especially in Shanghai, I remember one that comes to mind, who we already approached to write as part of a publication, and another who we're already thinking of showing his recent films, both because they show to us here how the sort of youth culture, the same sort of questions if we think about the recent same-sex marriage bills, how the condition over there in China and Korea, how they're navigating through that. So there's a lot of parallel, and we were excited by discovering those two people. And so already we're thinking to try and bring exhibitions here, or to try and show their work here. Meeting artists was probably the highlight of the tour. We got to see more than 56 exhibitions, 2 biennials, and a number of studio visits. And I think this was the first time I discovered that studios are my happy place. That's where I learned the most. I think going on this tour, it taught me what we also do really well in New Zealand. It taught me that the institutions that we have that support critical art practices, we're quite uniquely placed to be able to do that really well. But what we can also learn from, I think, is the kind of programs and exhibitions that is happening which try and create art connoisseurship, try and bring, for example, a gallery that occupies an alleyway next to vegetable stands, how they can be folded into that conversation. It's really grounded in that way. So another example is how, for urban developments and private property developers are being facilitators of art projects. So those interesting and very diverse ways of making exhibitions we can learn from. But at the same time, we do a few other things really well also.